Welcome to the Fish Nerds. It's a celebration of fish, fishing, and eating fish. Today, we're going to take a little break from our normal segmented show, and we have one special episode with Jayson Sacco. And just kind of a forewarning on this, if you are not into hunting or don't want to hear about big game hunting, this may not be the show for you. But if you want to hear about something a little bit different, you might enjoy this interview with Jayson Sacco. So enjoy the show. Oh, and this episode is brought to you by Mystery Tackle Box. Mystery Tackle Box is a monthly subscription tackle box company where every month you get a special gift in the mail of all kinds of crazy good lures that you can check out. And right now, if you want to support the Fish Nerds, go to mysterytacklebox.com. Enter promo code FISHNERDS, all one word, at checkout. Save $5 off your first month. You can cancel anytime. So that's it. Enjoy the show. FishNerds.com. You know, I'm so excited. Today, we are being visited from Texas with Jayson Sacco. Jayson is the host of the Outdoor Adventures with Jay Sacco podcast. And, hey, Jayson, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Clay. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and tell me, first of all, you've got, 8 or 9 episodes in the bag already. So you're relatively new in the podcast world. I want to know, first of all, why are you podcasting, as opposed to any other media you can get to? And then, what inspired you to do it? And what is your goal for the podcast, if there is one at all?
Sure. Going way back, I grew up with a friend's parents who owned a radio station in a real small town in Michigan. And so got to mess around with the radio bug and the whole 9 yards. But life got in the way and you move on and you do other things. And so as I got into hunting, I said, this is a great medium for somebody. I am handicapped, so I can't always get out and get available to do some of the hardcore hunts that I would love to participate in. And this was a great way for me to talk with the people that do get out in the field, share their stories. And a lot of the hunting podcasts lack that angle, that interest. So I thought I would bring it to everybody that's out there.
Well, that's fantastic. And so you had some big experience when you were younger. Now you're doing this and trying to find a new angle. And are you intimidated by the giant world of outdoor podcasts, or you feel like you've been welcomed so far into this world?
Surprisingly, I feel like I've been welcomed, and I think I've done about 17 episodes now.
Okay.
And they've been quite dynamic in scope. Some have been an hour, some have been 15 minutes. So there's no real common time frame.
Yeah. Isn't that the fun of podcasting? There's no rules. You just do what you feel like doing. It's like the Wild West. What am I going to do? Whatever I want. It's my show.
Exactly. Yeah. And nobody's going to punch you in the face.
Well, yeah, that's what Dave Jackson always says, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So and they will, though.
Well, yeah, some of the topics. But in the outdoor podcast industry, a lot of these folks that are outdoor guides, hunters, things, they're very good at that, but they're not so good at telling their story.
Right.
And so they can really lead to some quite boring listening. Mm-hmm. And that's what I thought about is growing up listening to radio disc jockeys and people that were very good at telling the story. How could I try to bring that story out of these guys who have some very interesting stories, just might not always be the best at telling them? Right.
Well, we can't all be good at everything. See, I'm a good storyteller, but not a great guide. So there's the win.
Yeah, and I'm probably not a good customer to some, and probably not a good guide to any.
Yeah.
But I do like to tell and like to pull that story out of people.
Well, the reason that people do all this stuff, ultimately comes down to, everyone who hunts and fishes has one thing in common: they all talk about it, and so it gives everyone that commonality. Because everyone who hunts and fish has a story to tell about it, has an adventure to share. And so I guess if you can pull that from them, then you're ahead of the game.
Well, let's hope so. It's been fun so far. As you said, I'm just new to this, so I definitely don't have the catalog of experiences and podcast episodes behind me that some do. But you've got to start somewhere, and it's been a great learning experience. This has really been a lot of fun to
Mm-hmm.
learn both the interview and the editing and everything else that goes along into it.
Well, you came into it in a good time, and I for one, been doing this for a few years now, think there's not nearly enough outdoor podcasts, and so welcome to the world of outdoor podcasting. And I think you're
Well,
going to
thank you.
find your biggest hurdle is when you go to these outdoor shows and you say, "Hey, I make a podcast." They're going to be looking at you like, "A what?" Because the outdoor world is not savvy yet in the podcasting stream, and you have to really educate your audience on what a podcast is, and that's the biggest challenge I've had with going to big outdoor shows.
Yeah, that's really been the truth. I've almost, if they're, I hate to say age wise, but if they're not younger, I just use the term internet radio show.
That's what we do. We use on demand radio.
Because that clicks instantly. They're like, oh, okay.
Yep. And then it's how do I listen? And you go to your website, push play. You don't have to complicate it. If they don't know what a podcast is, explaining what a podcast app is a waste of breath. So you just go to my website, push the play button, you're good to go. That's why I optimize my website for podcasting. So it's just right there in your face, push play.
Yeah, we had a gentleman at this recent show I was at that had an iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, let me show you something. Can I borrow your phone for a moment? And he's like, sure. And so I pulled up the podcast app and typed in the name of my podcast. And he was just like, I had no clue what this app was even for.
It's amazing, isn't it? And the whole world is open up right there. You just changed his life.
So he saw that. I, of course, hit subscribe and then let him go and said, just all you got to do is plug your headphones in and listen and find a topic, find something that you like, type it in there, and you'll probably find somebody talking about it. And he was just amazed. I feel bad for anybody that was coming up to talk to him about hunting afterwards, because I think he was going to get sidetracked real easy.
That's how I am. I get it. So that's cool. Well, hey, welcome to the podcasting world. And
well, thank you.
I'm glad you're part of it, and I hope that you get your first 50 episodes under your belt, and then find your comfort zone and get another 50, and it just gets more and more fun. It also gets easier, which is nice.
Well, that's what I'm hoping is there's just that learning curve, and as you start to get that under your belt, yes, I appreciate your help and welcome, and it's been a lot of fun.
Cool.
Well, and it's interesting. I wanted to have somebody on. Growing up in northern Michigan, or in Michigan, ice fishing was not an uncommon thing.
It's the best thing.
I live down here in South Texas now, and the only ice fishing that gets done is when the ice is in your drinks. And so it's a different concept for people to think that you actually go stand out on ice, and why would you do that? And they don't get how fun it is. So it was really neat to do this kind of partner up with you to talk and just bring a different perspective to the podcast.
Yeah, it's great. And as you pointed out, ice fishing is my thing. I love all kinds of fishing. And by the way, my show is not just about fishing. It's about fishing and eating fish. The entire world of fish is appropriate for us. So whether it's a fishy news story or a fishy biology story, we have correspondents around the world ready to report on all things fish related. So we are not just fishing, although I'm a little obsessed lately with just fishing. But in the podcasting world, as you know, you do what you feel like doing, and it's your show. So it's totally great.
Exactly. Well, that's fantastic. And that you got, when you listen to your episodes, like you said, you have people that will report in from all around.
Yeah.
And that's really, really unique and really, really neat.
Well, it saves me time. So.
Well, that too.
So,
yes.
But no, we have. So when Dave was my previous co-host and co-founder of the Fish Nerds. We started off, the Fish Nerds started off with a different title. We were called the Catch 'em All Guys. And we were on a quest to catch and eat every kind of freshwater fish in New Hampshire. And we got from there, that we got all kinds of fame and fortune, got on public radio and Chronicle, the news, and every newspaper in the state report on our adventures. And we started off as writers. And then it turned out writing is really hard. Telling stories verbally for me is easy, but writing is a challenge. So the podcast was born, and we rebranded into the Fish Nerds, and it just kind of took off. And then we did about 110 episodes with Dave, and he decided to leave the show. And when we announced that, our fans, we have thousands of people who are paying attention to us, said, whoa, we don't want the show to go away. How can we help? And so I created a little group of Fish Nerds fans, a little private group of people who are really dedicated, and we created this correspondence program. Now our fans are now working for the show, creating content for us, and it really has changed the dynamics of the show, and it really gets our audience engaged in what we're doing, and it diversifies what we're doing, which really is the key to sustainability, as you know.
And that's really cool.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, it's touching that people care enough to contribute, because you'll record, Jayson, as you get going. The only one listening will be your dog for months, and the only feedback you'll get is your dog barking or your wife hassling you, or something in your own home. And then all of a sudden, your fans will come out of the woodwork and go, "Oh man, I'm loving what you're doing. Remember episode 12 when you talked to this person or you did that?" And you realize that people do listen and do care about what you're saying, and it warms you up inside, because you really do. People don't know, for like a 40-minute show, you're putting in 4 hours, 5 hours of work for one short episode, and it's important to know that. Your fans should know how hard you work.
Very true, and it's interesting to get feedback. And every so often, I had a message yesterday with some feedback, and I'm like, "Oh, there are people listening."
It's great.
That's pretty cool.
By the way, even negative feedback is exciting for me. If I get a iTunes review and it's negative, I love it. I'm like, wow, someone thought about me. They listened to my show for an hour and they said something about it. And people don't like negative feedback, but it's still someone's listening, and it's exciting. I love it all.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to just get in there, and feedback it allows you to change up the show and make it better for your listeners.
Yeah.
So onto that, talking about that, tell me what's going on in the fishing world up in your neck of the woods.
Okay, so I this year just became a licensed fishing guide. I don't know if you know anything about becoming a fishing and hunting guide in most states, but in this country, every state sets their own way of doing things. Maine and New Hampshire have the hardest. They're known for having the hardest guide licensing process in the country. I think Maine is the hardest. New Hampshire's, I think, second or third. And you have to sit through a 3-hour-long oral board and prove that you're like some sort of expert outdoors person. I'm not sure what it proves, but you have to get through that 3-hour discussion. And it's pretty subjective on what they ask you. So you do that. So I launched this program, my guide service, and I did a series on how to become a fishing guide, which has been a very popular downloading show. So I've guided my first 2 trips now on the ice, and both have been successful. And it's a lot more work than I ever expected. It's not just going fishing, as you know. Have you hired guides before, Jayson?
Oh yeah, through the hunting side, and when I went overseas, and I know they were working far earlier than I was up.
Yeah. So when I do an ice fishing trip, I might start at 7. I might get on the ice at 5:30, and I'll set up the shanties and get the heaters turned on and get the coffee going and drill all the holes and get the gear organized. And so when my clients arrive, just like when you're being guided with a hunted, you want your clients just to show up, and then you hand them everything they need. You want a fishing rod? Here you go. You want some cup of coffee? Got you covered. You want some bratwurst for lunch? No problem. We got that too. So we just try to. It's all about you're working. It's a service job. It's not a hunting or fishing job. It's a service job. It's like working at a hotel in a lot of ways. You're just about trying to get those clients comfortable and happy. And then if they catch a fish or they win in their game hunt, that's a bonus. But it's really about getting them into the right frame of mind to tell their stories and enjoy themselves.
So you're fishing just local lakes around you, or anywhere that they want to go? Well,
so for now, I live in the Mount Washington Valley, which is one of the biggest ski tourist towns in the country. When the people come from all over the world to come here. And my focus is on fishing in the Mount Washington Valley. There's some bigger lakes, some bigger fish to be caught in the state besides here, but I'd like to keep my focus on the Mount Washington Valley, because first I want the money to stay in the valley. I want people who are coming here to stay here, spend their money here, have fun here, and I'm really dedicated to that. But the other reason is I know the waters here so well, and if someone pays me to fish in a lake an hour and a half away, that means I have to go fish that hour and a half lake away, for 2 weeks before they arrive, so I can learn the water and find the fish before they get here, and that's a lot of work. And I don't guide for a living. Yet. I'm just starting out. I have 4 other jobs I have to get done, and And so I don't have the time for that. But I have fished all over the state. I do know where most of the fish live. And if you know enough about habitat and stuff, you can usually work it out. But focusing on the Mount Washington Valley, trying to get those guys spending their money locally.
Oh, fantastic. Now,
Yeah.
what is the big local fish that inhabits the waters there?
So my big one the last 2 weeks has been lake trout, which are togue, they call them in some places. And my first guided trip, I had never been successful at ice fishing for togue before, for lake trout. And that was 2 weeks ago. The guy who hired me is a fan of the show. And on my show, I announced two things. One, I don't like fishing on Silver Lake, which is my biggest lake near me. And two, I don't like trout fishing for togue. And so, mostly because that lake is so terrible. It's a really horrible place. Beautiful, but no fish in it. And so when he hired me, he wanted me to do those two things. He goes, well, since you said you don't want to fish Silver Lake, I'm going to pay you to go there. And since you don't like fishing for lake trout, I'm going to pay you to go lake trout fishing. And I said, all right, well, you give me money, but you're not going to catch any fish. And so I spent all night researching the lake, looking at maps. I've already fished it for 7 years and not been successful. So I'd already given that lake up. And the morning of the trip, my snowmobile broke, so we had to walk out to the spot I chose. The snow was 12 inches deep with 4 inches of slush under it and 10 inches of ice. So it was really not ideal for walking on, but I made him do it because he told me to. And we went out, and immediately, within a few minutes, he caught his first big lake trout, and he ended up with 12 for the day, which a good lake trout day might be 2 Lakers any place. And
Wow.
I put him on 12, and it was dumb luck. So that was my first trip. And
Dumb luck's better than no luck.
well, I did my homework, so I'm not sure that's fair to call it dumb luck. I knew roughly where to go and how to do it, and then since then I've taken I invited all the local media to go fishing with me. So the local morning radio show came out fishing with me, and while on the air talking about what I do, the DJ caught a lake trout, so which is gold. In fact,
All off of Silver Lake that you don't like to
that
fish.
I freaking hate that lake. And then the newspapers come out and fish with me since then, and everyone's been successful. And they're doing this weekend. The radio is doing a 5-minute special on ice fishing in the Mount Washington Valley, and the newspaper's doing a front page spread on ice fishing in the Mount Washington Valley. And my stuff is all featured front and center because it was my idea for them both to do it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, and it doesn't cost me any money. You just have to work him. You just got to call them up and say, hey, you guys want to go fishing? And they go, really? We can do that? And they go, yeah, let's go. That's it.
So, outside of lake trout, you've got perch.
We have yellow perch and white perch, yeah. And yellow perch, of course, are super easy, nice native fish to catch. White perch, a little more work, not native. And then, all your warm water species that you have down in Texas, we got a lot of those up here. So all your largemouth, smallmouth bass, bluegills, pumpkin seeds, bullheads, all kinds of stuff live here as well. And so you have a lot of opportunity for a lot of different kinds of fish. I'm a diversity guy, so I like to hit a small pond and catch as many different kinds of fish as possible. But whatever the clients want to catch, that's what we're going to go for.
Oh, fantastic. Now, I see south and west of you is that Lake Winnipesaukee.
Yeah, beautiful lake. Yeah, love it.
Is that where you like to do a lot of fishing?
I don't.
Oh, okay.
I do like to fish it. It's a great fishery. I don't guide out there, though. And there's two reasons. One, again, it's an hour and a half from my house to go out there. It's just too much work. But the other is I have other friends in the industry who have been guiding there for years, and I'm not ready to put my feet in their waters, if you know what I mean. Like, I don't want to undercut them. Right now, my first year out, my prices are lower than their prices. I don't think I, in fairness, can charge the premium rates they charge. So if I was a guide on Winnipesaukee first year out of the gate, I'd be charging my rates, which are a little bit lower than their rates, and I'd be undercutting them, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to, alienate anybody in the industry. In fact, I just like podcasting. I think there's room for everybody. I think with the guide services, there's not enough people hunting and fishing. We need more people doing it, and good guides encourage the growth of those industries. So I don't feel like it's competition, but I don't want to put them in a position where they feel like it is.
Oh, okay. So, and you're right on the Maine border.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'm 10 minutes away.
So now, does your guide license cross over to Maine, or would that be a whole new place that you'd have to go to get covered under?
Yeah, that's a whole new process. And Maine is a different planet in fishing than New Hampshire. Believe it or not, it's 10 minutes away, but it's a different culture. And you cross that border, and everyone is different. It's really interesting.
Oh, okay. So yeah, you're definitely going to stay in that North Conway area
Yeah.
to do your thing.
Exactly. So, and it's a lot of fun up here, and there's so much to do: art, music, culture. It's all right here in this like little valley. And again, it's one of the like top 5 ski towns in the country. So there's thousands of people coming here every month to go skiing and shopping, whatever else. My hope is like they're in town for a week. I'm gonna go shopping. I'm gonna do a little bit of skiing. I can go ice fishing. Hey kids, come on, get in the car. We're going fishing. And then they just pay me, and I take them out and have a great time.
Have a good time. Oh yeah. See, we would fish a lot on the Great Lakes. I grew up on Lake Huron,
I can't imagine how awesome that was.
and it was pretty neat. I always used to freak out when we drive the cars out onto the lake because you always imagine the car going through.
Yep, seen that.
But I never really I rarely ice fished the small inland lakes.
Mhm.
I don't know why, but you'd go out and you'd fish primarily on Lake Huron. Mostly you were looking for walleye. At least that's what we were when we were kids. Is we were out walleye fishing.
Mhm. I've never caught a walleye through the ice, but they're delicious. Now, when you're fishing those big lakes, are you catching a lot of fish, or is it a few fish here and there?
Yes.
Yeah, and it could be either one.
Yeah, you can go out there and just you can't hardly get your pole in the water and you're just reeling another fish out.
Mhm.
And then you can have days when you just sit there.
Yeah.
And now just going back nowadays, guys can drop fish finders down there and sonar, and I mean we were just going out there with some bait and fish poles. So it was a whole different ball game. You didn't know what was around.
Yeah, I cheat. I use the sonars. I'm all in on electronics.
If I was doing it, so would I.
Yeah.
It makes it a great way to actually make yourself more efficient. Probably the best time I ever had ice fishing though was in Ontario on Lake Simcoe. And I don't know if you're familiar with that lake.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
It's for perch fishing.
Mhm.
Holy cow. I mean, everybody that was out there was limiting out. And these guys take their shanties pretty darn serious.
I've seen them. Oh my gosh, I know exactly what you're talking about there.
I had a shanty that was a sled that you pulled out on the ice and flipped the top over you.
Mm-hmm.
These guys, I went into one shanty and you walked into the front foyer of the shanty and you took your boots off, put your slippers on. You went to the next room where they did cooking, and you went into the third room, which is actually where all the guys were fishing.
That's amazing, isn't it?
And that wasn't uncommon. There was multiple ones out there like that. And so if you ever get a chance to head north and into Ontario, fish Lake Simcoe, it's an absolutely amazing time.
Yeah, and I think too the culture that grows around those fishing villages that pop up is something worth exploring too, even if you're not fishing. And ice fishermen are notoriously friendly. And you go up and you talk to any of these guys. First of all, they're proud of their shanties. They want to show it to you. So if you start talking, they're going to invite you in. They're going to offer you a bowl of chili or some chowder. They're going to show you everything. And so I think one of the things I always tell people, I encourage people to go out on the ice and talk to fishermen, because it's the friendliest crowd of people, and they're bored and they want to talk to somebody.
So I would say 90% of them out there will just absolutely will share 100% of their knowledge.
Yeah. It's amazing. You just dump it right on you. It's fantastic. So, yeah, a lot of good stuff. So, you're down in Texas, right?
I am.
So, what part of Texas?
I live in San Antonio, down in South Texas.
I've been to San Antonio. My dog is from Texas. Yeah. She's a blue heeler. Around here, in our area, our Humane Society imports almost all their dogs from Texas.
Oh, okay.
The blue heelers almost exclusively from Texas. And they're really popular around here, but I guess there's a lot of stray blue heelers down there, and they just ship them out.
Yeah, they're a common livestock dog down here, along with blackmouth curs and the Catahoulas are very common down here.
Yep.
And then the state dog is the Blue Lacy.
Oh, beautiful dog.
That's a fantastic dog. It's probably the smartest dog, But yeah, those Queenslands, that's what you have as a Queensland heeler, correct?
Yeah, blue heeler, yeah.
Blue heeler?
Yeah. Or Australian, they call them Australian cattle dogs up here. They don't call them heelers, but same dog.
Yeah, same. Yeah. And great dog, tenacious,
Hmm.
just a very smart dog.
Yeah, love them. So in Texas, and your big sport, you fish, but you're a hunting guy. Like that's your thing.
Yes.
And you've done all kinds of hunting. Have you traveled the world to do this? I know you interview people around the world. You're always talking about big game hunting in Africa and that sort of thing. Have you done that sort of thing?
I did. I spent a week hunting in Zimbabwe a few years back, and I've gone hunting in Ontario, but I missed the bear. So bears are 1, I'm 0.
Oh, that's too bad. You should come hang out in my backyard.
All right, I'll do that.
Yeah,
You guys have quite the bear problem.
we do. I've had bears eat my chickens a couple of times. And now, what's interesting about New Hampshire is you don't need on your own property. I can shoot all the bears I want to without a license, but I can't invite like other people to do it for me. Like I can't lease the land and that sort of thing. I can hunt my own bears, but I don't hunt at all, and it's not because I'm anti-hunting. You want to know why I don't hunt?
Why is that?
I don't want to deal with large dead mammals in the woods. To me, it just seems like too much work.
True.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what. You'll probably get an old timer or two around there, but they'll tell you that bear meat is fantastic.
That's what I've heard. I've heard people who've never eaten it complain about how gamey it is, and people who like it love it. And that's about it. So.
Yeah, you get the roast and you cook them all day in a crock pot, and you'll have a very, very good meal going on there.
Yeah, if I do ever take a bear, and if the bear here, by the way, ever attacks my chickens again, I will find a way to kill him. I will. My plan would be to make like a bunch of bear chili and get a bunch of bear meat prepared ahead of time, and then when I'm ice fishing at lunchtime, that serve my clients bear meat. And then they'll get that like authentic experience. Man, I went ice fishing. I caught a fish. I ate bear, and they'll tell all their friends about it. And
exactly,
it's beautiful.
Yeah, we don't have East Texas has a few bears. When it was real dry here a couple of years ago, we had quite a few bears coming up out of Mexico and hitting the corn feeders and stuff that people use to feed corn to the deer. Mm-hmm. And so that we were seeing quite a few bear pictures, but now that the rains have come and it's kind of freshened up and there's food around, the bears don't come over too much anymore. Yeah, and you're in less populous. I mean, Texas is so big. There's plenty of places for bears to go where they're not going to interact with people. And New Hampshire's kind of a smaller state, and the bears are in our backyards, and they live here in our yards. Right. So yeah, that would be a unique thing to walk out the back door and walk into. Well, it's neat. This past fall. The springtime, I'm at work. My wife texts me, and she goes, "Hey, just want to send you this picture." And she had just put the kids in the minivan and walked into the house. And between the minivan and the front door of the house, there was this like 400-pound bear just sitting there. Wow. And by the way, my kids and my wife, none of them are afraid of bears. It doesn't in the least frighten them. They just walk out and yell at the bear, and the bear walks away. That's it. There's no aggression. It's not a scary thing. Bears don't like people. They just walk away. So, yeah. But a lot of people go, "Oh, yeah, do something about that." Yeah, the bear's not doing anything. It just happens to live in our yard. Now, your dog doesn't lose his mind? She loves the bear. Her favorite is finding the big piles of bear poop and rolling in it. Yeah, that's her thing. Yeah, that would be a thing I'd not be happy about. Yeah, she does like chasing the bear. If she's outside and the bear's outside, the bear will be running through the woods up in the trees, and she thinks that's the greatest fun ever, chasing bears. But yeah, it doesn't just everyone's good. I mean, the bears, we kind of have this like agreement right now, where if they don't bother my chickens or eat my trash, I won't eat them. And I've explained this to them, and that's it. So. But yeah, it's fun. And again, I haven't killed one yet because I really like seeing them, but it may happen. Yeah, there's definitely, wildlife as a whole is great to watch. Mm-hmm. And it's, for the most part, the bulk of the money that goes into wildlife management is from the hunting and fishing licenses in the industries that we pursue. Oh, I totally agree with that. I have people who protest my show, and they publicly in my area, and they also email my boss at my day job, which I work with kids during the day, and they question whether or not I can possibly be a good human being because I fish and I talk about fishing. And they confront me in person, and I'll say, "Well, have you bought a fishing license?" And they go, "Why would you ask me that?" I said, "Because the money goes to conservation. And what money have you put towards conservation? You've bought markers from Walmart. You've made a nice big cardboard sign you bought at Walmart.
Tell me about your conservation work. Nothing? Well, then you're just talking. You're just making noise. But I put money in. I put money in the hat. And I also encourage people, even if they're not fishing, to buy a fishing license. I don't know about your state, but in New Hampshire, we have what's called a Hike Safe program. So if you buy a fishing license, it's the same as buying a hiker safety card. It's like an insurance against you get lost in the woods, fishing game will come rescue you. If you don't have that and you get lost in the woods, fishing game will still come get you, but then you get a bill afterwards.
Oh, interesting.
We don't have high taxes. We have the second lowest taxes in the country in New Hampshire. And so we have to get our revenue someplace. And so I encourage everyone, buy your fishing license. That goes to conservation and acts as insurance if you get lost in the woods and need rescue. And it's $58 a year. It's small money to pay.
Well, and that's the thing. You've got, not only is it the hunting and fishing licenses that are sold, if every time you buy lures, every time you buy a pole, every time you buy a shanty, anything that is outdoor related, part of that tax goes back into conservation.
Absolutely.
And these anti-hunters get out there and what they're not conservationists. They misuse the word. They're preservationists.
Right.
And preservation is great for a building, but you have to have the conservation, which is the wise use of resources.
Absolutely.
And they don't get that disconnect.
No, they don't. And it's hard. I don't argue with them too much in real life. Mostly I'm nice to them and they're mean to me. And I just say, for someone who claims to be kind, you're being awfully rude. But you can't argue with them. You're not going to convince them, just like they're not going to convince us. So there's no change going to happen. They're going to do what they're going to do. And if they get me publicly or they get me on my Facebook page or whatever, I just thank them for the content, because for my show, it's beautiful. Yeah. So yeah, totally good. But to my small town, not only do they confront you publicly, but they also you might have to work with those people in your career someplace. And so even if I disagree with them and they're rude to me, I am never mean to them.
No, you've got to put that best image forward.
Yeah, I have a really good time taking people fishing, and I have a really good time hearing people who disagree with me, if they can do it in a way that isn't mean, But it's a different world. Now, I was listening to your early show, and you were talking about big game hunting in Africa, and you were also saying that you support any kind of legal fishing and hunting. And
correct.
This is where you and I kind of disagree a little bit. I agree with you with the concept of your argument. But I have at an ethical level, like I don't agree with, for example, in fishing, people always limiting out. Like, I agree there should be limits, but there are people who fish and their goal is to catch a limit every single day, and just for the sake of doing it. And I don't like that kind of fishing. That's not my style. And when it comes into hunting, I don't know enough about it to argue against hunting things, but I do get a little queasy when I see, some of the big game hunting in Africa and stuff, but I don't have a good case to make against it. It just makes me uncomfortable. Probably like those preservationists feel. I probably feel like they do about those things. What's your thoughts on people like me who can't quite get on their brains on those bigger hunting things?
Well, it's not so much using the example that you gave of the person that limits out.
Yeah.
I don't know. We do know those kind of people exist. Mm-hmm. They're probably in far less numbers than we think.
I think you're right.
But that's why there's a limit.
Right.
And so, I go back to the same thing, that if the person paid the money and is doing it legally, now, if that limit says 6 and they got 7,
right, they're poaching,
then I think they should be whacked.
Right. I agree with that.
But if that limit says 6 a day, have to trust whatever game and fish department set that limit, mm-hmm. that's a number that could healthily be extracted from the population without causing any problems, knowing that guy might go out there and try to get 6 a day and maybe only get 4, 5,
right,
2. So yes, I also bank on the idea that there's probably more people like you and I, mm-hmm. that just go out there to have fun, versus the person that's going out there to just hammer it. Yeah,
I'm kind of with you on that one, and I go back and forth on it, because there are days where I do want to limit out. I want to eat a pile of trout tonight. I'm going to go and catch mm-hmm. My 2 trout limit through the ice, and I'm going to eat trout for dinner. I think it's the people who just, because it's almost like a trophy for their refrigerator. They wonder how much fish can I stack in that freezer, and I don't know. I guess it gets a little queasy. But then we get into the bigger game hunting, and I see these big lions and the big elephants and all kinds of, I don't have elephants, but then I get a little more uncomfortable with that stuff. But I hear your point on it.
Well, and with the bigger game animals, the African elephant, the African lion, the what's called the big five, the hippopotamus, things of that nature. Those are unique, especially for Americans, because really our only exposure to those is in the zoo.
Right. It's like our pets.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you want to see the anti-hunters really come up in arms, it's anytime I post a picture when I took a giraffe.
You took a giraffe?
Yes.
Get off my show.
Well, but you have to figure there's a
wow, that's insane.
Giraffe are a game species, just like anything else.
Sure.
Now, is the population going down? Yes, but it's not necessarily been proven that it's from sport hunting.
Right.
It's giraffe are easy to poach, and why are they easy to poach? Because they're big.
Right.
And 1 or 2 shots from a poacher's rifle will feed a lot of people with a giraffe.
Right.
Now, the property that I was on hunting in Zimbabwe, they didn't have any predators. The giraffes didn't. And when I talked to the manager of the property, there was so many giraffes on that property, they were going to end up culling 55 of them that year. And you sit there and most people say, well, why don't they just move them?
Like that's easy to do, right?
Okay, move them where?
Yeah, then what?
And who's going to pay for it? And there's I even hate to use his name, but there's a person that considers themselves an actor, and his name's Ricky Gervais, and he's very much anti-hunting.
Yep.
And when the whole issue with the lion getting killed in Africa went down
by that dentist,
Zimbabwe, right? There was a lot of finger pointing going on, and there's a gentleman that's a professional hunter, a fantastic guy named Ivan Carter, who said, okay, here's what we'll do. Anybody that is not into hunting but wants to come over and pay the same amount of money to photograph a buffalo that a person hunting that buffalo would take it, he said, we'll do that. We'll mark that buffalo out, and that buffalo will be considered your buffalo.
Right.
But it won't die. You'll just get the pictures from it.
Right. So they're not putting their money where their mouth is.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's
0 people took that up.
And that's usually the case with that preservation mentality. Is they're against it, but they're not actually going to put their money in an area that will do the job that they want to do.
And if you look and there's a thing that floats around a number of social media sites. If you look at Kenya, who stopped sport hunting in either the late 70s or early 80s, their population density of wildlife is virtually gone. But if you look at a place like South Africa, where there's regulated and very strong sport hunting, animal numbers are flourishing, and not only just for the animals that are native to the area, but also for something like a rhinoceros, which is being poached everywhere else. But once they're put under the protection of the game farms, where the money's there to protect them on a day-by-day basis, they flourish.
Right. Well, there's that. So let's bring it more local. Okay, let's talk coyotes.
Sure.
Okay, so a lot of hunters in New Hampshire and around the country I see shoot coyotes for fun.
Yes.
And they just kill them off. They don't eat them. They don't do anything with them. They just kill them. And so the science is coming back on coyotes that they're actually adapted very well for that kind of sport. And by killing them off, actually increases the population of coyotes rather than decreasing it. Have you heard this?
I have not, but that really wouldn't surprise me because they're extremely intelligent.
Yep.
So they adapt and figure out what. It wouldn't surprise me that coyotes are good at determining what the older calls are fake. These newer calls are, I think, a harder process for them with these digital sounds.
Yeah. Well, it's more to do with so it has something to do with the calls, but it's more to do with the population density and chemically their body changes. If there's a lot of coyotes or if there's enough coyotes in the area, then they only have 1 or 2 pups. So if you take a lot of coyotes out of the area, they'll have 9 pups, 8 pups. And so their population changes with how many coyotes are in their area. And they know through the calls and scent, other reasons, how many coyotes are there. And so their population grows as you hunt them, as opposed to decreasing as you hunt them. It has an inverse relationship.
Very well could be. That's not a study I've seen, but it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest
Google
bit.
it. You'll really enjoy it. I found it really surprising. Again, I don't know how I feel with people hunting coyotes. I have a problem with people not eating what they hunt. So I always get, if you're going to kill something, do something with it. I just, killing things bothers me if you're not going to eat.
There's also the idea that you have to control predators to a degree.
Sure, but you can eat them. They're edible.
Oh, sure. Yeah, you can eat them. I've not sure if the coyote is something that people would eat. I guess it'd be like a dog.
I think so. I think culturally, so here's what it comes down to cultural. Like, I think even hunters are squirmish about eating dogs. Like a hunter who will eat anything still might not eat a coyote because they've got dogs. It's too close.
Yeah, and that's very true. It's not a acceptable food source here in the States.
Right.
And I've seen guys sit out there and shoot prairie dogs.
Yes, delicious.
And I'm not sure I would eat those, and I'm not sure there's much left of them to pick up after they're done shooting them.
Right.
But so yeah, it's a lot of that gets left out, and for example, if you're shooting the prairie dogs, they leave those out, and guess who eats them?
Coyotes.
The coyote.
Yep.
So it's kind of that circle of life, but there's, as long as it's, and I've said this, as long as the person is buying a hunting license or a fishing license, following the rules and doing what's set by their state, that's legally set by their state, then I would be a hypocrite to not support them.
Yeah. See, I'm a hypocrite. So that's my problem. Is I don't agree with all the rules, although I don't go after the person. If someone's following the rules, it's not their fault. You'd be better off if you don't agree with the rules. Go after the rules. Go to the hearings. Have the conversations with the people.
Sure.
Not the hunters and fishermen. They're not doing anything wrong. They're following the rules. It's not their fault.
If you don't like that, then you got to go to the rule making, the legislation, and say why.
Yeah.
And they're either going to listen to you or they're going to throw you out.
Yeah.
So like I said, I've gone under the assumption that as long as it's verifiable and it's rules that are set in place and nobody's breaking them, then I've got no problem to each their own. I don't necessarily have any desire to chase bears with the hounds.
No.
Is that
a thing people do?
That's the thing people do. It's just not something that's ever caught my attention. I'm not against it.
Right.
It's just not something that's ever caught my attention. But as long as it's legal and you're doing it legally, have fun. That's your prerogative. You might not like to ice fish, and you might rather chase bears with hounds. So as long as you're outside paying your taxes and paying your licensing fees, go for it.
Well, that's good. I think I can agree with that. So yeah, that's that. Well, can't argue anymore on that one.
No, and hunting is certainly what I tell people is the actual moment when you pull that trigger. That's the antithesis of it, the climax of it, it's everything that leads up to it, which is what is fun.
Right. It's the hunt. It's being outside. It's the tracking and all that sort of thing. So
it's just exactly. It's the whole package that leads up to it.
So I have an idea. So I have a hunting activity for those who hate hunting. So let's say you want all that stuff. You want to trek an animal through the woods. You want to find an animal, and you want to shoot it, but you don't want to kill anything. I've come up with an idea. In New Hampshire, we have a huge problem with ticks. I don't know if you have a tick problem in Texas, but 70% of all of our calf moose die because of ticks.
Oh, wow.
And so they've been working on trying to find ways to like frontline mice and stuff to keep the ticks population down so they don't get to the deer. Or to the moose. So I think, what if we let people hunt moose, but instead of hunting with bullets, hunt with these little syringes of like frontline. And so you get all the joy of going on the hunt and shooting the animal, but all you're doing is tagging it with this medicine that's killing the ticks off and allowing the moose to live. And then people who want to do it can pay a fee for it and can buy all the equipment to do it, and it's like a self-sustaining moose protection effort, and people get to go out and have all that joy of hunting without the killing.
Oh yeah, they've got that now. Very similar program in many areas in sub-Saharan Africa.
Really?
And they're called green hunts.
I thought I made it up. Damn it.
Well, no, but great call. I don't know that it's done here in the States. But a green hunt would be you want to go out and take a rhinoceros, but it's not capable of it because there aren't any really for whatever species you're looking at. Well, modern taxidermy can recreate that photo and get you ahead on the wall.
Yeah, they do a great job. Replicas now are so good.
So you actually go out and maybe it's a black rhino and you shoot it with a tranquilizing gun. And in essence, what you're doing is that property, that state, that country was going to tranquilize that rhino anyway, because they were going to give it its shots and give it its measurements. They were going to do all that to begin with, but they're just getting you to pay for it.
That's great. See?
So in essence, it's conservation at its purest form.
That's what all these vegans should go do. Pay the fee, go tag a rhino. Perfect. I'm in.
Yeah, there you go. And then you get your picture taken with it, and you've sat there and you watched all the vetting process go on. You get to participate in it, and then you watch them administer the reversal. The rhino gets up, and off he or she runs.
Perfect. I love it. Well, that's good. So I'm going to do that now. As soon as I get $1 billion to afford it, I'm in.
You just got to figure out how to get people out in the woods and let them get close enough to the moose.
That's not that hard. They're not that smart.
You get them out there and yeah, I guess with your location and proximity to Maine, you probably have a fairly healthy moose population.
Fairly healthy, but the ticks are killing them. The tiniest animals are killing the biggest animals. It's crazy.
And is it it's got to be a tick that's not normal. It's an invasive.
No, it's a native tick. It's just out of control right now, and there's something else out of whack environmentally that's allowing the ticks to get out of control. I think it's a mouse or something like that. But so they move from the mice to the deer to the moose.
Oh, okay. Because you'd think if that was a native tick, that animal would have developed some type of not resistance to it, but I guess
they would have adapted
to it.
Now, arguably, I would accept the argument that if 70% of moose calves are dying, 30% are stronger, and those 30% are going to pass those good genes on, and in the end, it might be okay if we didn't do anything.
Certainly hope so.
Yeah, but so what they're doing now is they're putting these mouse traps in the woods that dangle these little medicine in them, and the mice run through the traps, and the mice get frontlined, and so they're basically treating the mice for ticks before they get to the moose.
Wow, it's amazing what they'll do.
Hey, they're trying, man. I mean, it's expensive, and New Hampshire is not known for throwing money away. So, yeah.
No, because you guys have a view tax, is it not, New Hampshire?
I pay a view tax, but we don't. It's hard to quantify what that actually is. But,
got it.
Yeah, but even with all of our taxes, we have the highest property taxes in the country. We have no sales or income tax. We're still paying less than probably you're paying in taxes.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, when I get paid everything except for the federal income tax is gone, but I'm not giving 5% off the top to the state or 7% in Maine or,
Yeah, we don't have a state income tax down here. Where they get you is the property tax.
Property tax gets us. You got to pay for the schools, and the schools are worth paying for. But the weird is it's not leveled in a way that makes sense, because like in our town, I pay, for my house, I pay $5,000 a year. I own another town next door to this town, same school district, and I pay half the tax rate. So,
Wow.
yeah, it's highly variable taxes. And that's where the big controversy comes in. But that's a whole different show. I'm not here to do a political talk show on taxes.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
well, that's fantastic. It's neat. It's very neat that the guide service is going for you.
Yeah. Well, I've led 2 trips. I mean, that's hardly winning, but we've caught fish. So
But you just started.
You're just starting out and learn it. I think more importantly is getting the show content, being able to tell people, yeah, here's how you become a fishing guide. And people can consume that information.
Yeah, that's a really interesting. I mean, because Maine is not a huge, or I'm sorry, New Hampshire is not a huge state.
Mm-mm.
So for you to go through the program and then be able to disseminate that out, but knowing that that's that somebody in, say, Texas can listen to that and say, okay, well, if this is one of the hardest states, and I've just listened to what Clay had to go through, all right, what do I have to do here in Texas?
Right. Well, there's not a lot different. I mean, honestly, in most states, it's you go, like, I think in North Carolina, anyone can be a guide. You just go and pay the money and you get your license. But the actual running the business, which I'm going through the whole process, building the business, here's the expenses, here's what it costs for insurance, here's how you buy insurance, here's the gear you have to buy, here's all the background information. That's all people are looking for, because every state's going to be different in how to become a guide, but running a guide service is still going to be a customer service job that people have to understand. It's about taking care of clients. And I think that's all people can take that with them and learn it. And I'm going to make mistakes, and people can learn from my mistakes. I'm going to alienate some other guides, and people can learn from that. And yeah, it's going to happen.
Now, do you also guide, or will you be guiding in the summertime on open water?
So currently my summer job already is taking people fishing, but not as a guide. I drive a pontoon boat and I bring kids fishing as part of a summer camp. You don't really have to be a guide to do that.
Okay.
So I already do that on a small scale, but I think I'm trying to come up with an idea that's a little different than what most fishing guides are doing. Because what I like about ice fishing is it's a whole effort. You go on the ice for a day. You're setting up camp. You're making fire. You're cooking food. It's a family grouping of people. It's different than just walking a river and fly fishing. So I kind of have this concept of opening up a business where I have a pontoon boat and I take people, a family, on a lake for a full day of 7 hours in the water. So in the morning, get on the boat. We cruise out, we catch some smallmouth bass or whatever. When the sun warms up a little bit, bring the kids to a sandbar. They can swim for a little bit. Lunch rolls up. We pull up to some bank somewhere. I bring the grill out, cook up some burgers and dogs. Do a little fishing after lunch, more rope swing, then back to the car. Like this whole, not just fishing, but I want to have this
day on the water,
an adventure. And ice fishing is the same. It's an ice fishing adventure. It's not just the fish. It's a whole experience. And and no one's doing this kind of thing up here. So I figure I could do something different and own the business.
You're 3 hours or so north of Boston?
Yeah, roughly. Yeah.
So you've got a number of people that can come up. That is Mount Washington. That's the highest point, correct?
Yeah, in New England. Yep.
In New England. So people come up in that area summer, fall, winter, spring.
Mm-hmm.
They decide it's a lot cheaper, especially with a family, to rent a boat for a day than buy it and store it all year long to use it once or twice.
I would say rent a boat and a driver. In New Hampshire, you need a boat and license in New Hampshire. So it's a lot involved with that. And I'd have insurance and everything. They wouldn't have to do a thing. Show up.
Yep, just show up, bring whatever they want, and have fun.
It's just an easy day out. And so, a quick trivia: Mount Washington Valley. What do you think the biggest draw to the area is? What brings the most tourists to the Mount Washington Valley? With what little you know.
With what little I know, it's funny because I just saw something on this the other day. Was that cable car that runs up to Mount Washington?
Yeah, the
train,
the cog railway. Yeah.
Is that so? To me, that might be it. I don't know.
No, that's really fun. That's $80 a person to ride up the mountain on that. That's capturing. The biggest draw to Mount Washington Valley is outlet shopping.
Really?
Yeah, because we have no taxes and we have this great outlet system. People come from Canada. We're only 3 hours from Quebec, and people come down in droves. Thousands and thousands of people come down from Canada, buy our stuff, and sneak it across the border. Yeah.
Hey, capitalism at its best.
It's a beautiful thing, and so I want their money.
Yeah, and especially if they're staying down there to for a few days to shop. Even if you're taking a couple of the guys out with a ladies shop or vice versa.
Yep.
Not to be too sexist there.
It's hard not to be sexist sometimes. We try not to be, but we're going to always, there's always a little bit of bias in this world where we, more guys fish than girls. That's the way it is.
Yeah. So. And personally, I'd love to see it just an equal basis as a father with daughters.
Oh, I have 2 daughters who are fantastic at fishing. They'll put on princess dresses and makeup, and they'll go catch more fish than any boy on the lake. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's great. Well, I'm glad that's taken off for you.
Mm-hmm.
That it's something you've been able to get content for your show.
Yeah.
If you ever want to try hunting, come on down. We'll you can't come to Texas and not go hog hunting. Yeah, we're synonymous for having all the feral hogs.
Yeah, I've heard nothing but fun about that. I have a friend who does hog hunting in Tennessee and just loves it. Fills his freezer up and yeah.
Well, and you know what they do? They catch a lot of them. They live catch them, and they take them to the sales stations down here. And you know where they end up?
No.
On all the big East Coast cities in the restaurants when you see wild boar.
Oh, that's what it is, right? Yeah. Oh, I've eaten your Texas wild boar. Then totally delicious.
So if you go and pay these exorbitant prices in Boston, New York, the big East Coast cities, that wild boar is generally coming out of Texas.
Well, then I've helped your economy. You're welcome. Hey,
fantastic.
So what's next for your podcast? What's next big steps for you? What do you got coming up?
Just keep working. February is shaping up to be, I'm going to focus and highlight nothing but women that are in the industry.
Mm-hmm. That's good. A lot of them.
So a lot of them and they don't necessarily always get the most praise.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've got several just fantastic taxidermists that will be interviewed, female taxidermists. We've got a woman that does just a ton of hunting out of New Mexico, and she's going to be very interesting to talk with. So there's a number of good ones coming up, and then it'll be into the springtime, and I think I'm going to do some runs with a variety of different African professional hunters.
That's fantastic. So you got a lot of good stuff coming up, and you guys are about 18 episodes in, you said. And
yes.
Remind people where they can find your show. Obviously, people who listen to this show already know they can go to iTunes and probably Stitcher and find you.
If you, should be on Stitcher. If you go to the iTunes podcast, it's just Outdoor Adventures with Jayson, and that's Jayson with a Y. Or you can go to my website at www.oawjs.com, and I have my podcast there that you can listen to. Or just go and I'm on YouTube. Every podcast loads up to YouTube. Mm-hmm. So there's a number. Or look me up on Facebook. Outdoor Adventures with Jayson on Facebook, as well as Jayson Sacco on Facebook. And both of those places will contain links to my podcast as well.
And of course, at fishnerds.com on the show notes for this episode, there will be plenty of links and photos as well.
And in mine, I'll have links to all the fish nerds and all that good stuff, because it's a wonderful process, and I love that you're focused on that specific area and the fishing that you do, but then you encompass reports from around everywhere else. I just think that's a really sharp setup.
Well, we got lucky with having some really great listeners who really wanted to keep the show on the road, and I do feel lucky every day that people care enough to be part of the show. So, and Jayson, I thank you for joining me today, because it's totally cool to talk to other podcasters. We always are in danger of getting too deep into the podcasting world. And I think you did an okay job steering back into fishing and hunting. So,
yeah, that was my fear, and it's because it's such a fun thing.
So that's it. You've listened to a couple of fish nerds when you should have been fishing. We would like to thank our families for supporting us while we podcast, go on fishing quests, and do all sorts of silly things that nerds do. If you would like to support the Fish Nerds, go to patreon.com and search for Fish Nerds. Help us crowdfund this show. Special thanks to Jayson Sacco of Outdoor Adventures with Jayson. And until next time, follow the code of the Fish Nerds, spawn early and often, avoid free lunches with strings attached, and swim against the current every chance you get. Do, 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 is this thing recording?